I'm Shelly Photiades. I am a certified Somatic Movement Educator and a co-founder of SomaCurious.
My name is Gena Rho, and I had the pleasure of teaching Shelly Photiades. I can talk about my somatic journey to this point and the somatic work that I do currently. Everything, as we know from the somatic practice, from an internal awareness, has to do with what you've arrived at this point. What's the history of your experience and your perspective. It's everything. So I started out as an educator. I have a degree in education, special education. I was a classroom teacher. I became a professional dancer. And throughout all of that time, I was involved in different somatic modalities, Alexander technique, something a little bit more esoteric, as Susan Klein technique was a little bit more of a New York downtown dance modality, all somatic, all in the interest of helping someone feel more in their body and full in who they are. That was important as a performer to me. So after my performing days and when I became a mother, I became a yoga teacher, a yogi, practiced yoga, which led me down the road of more different somatic work. And that's when I met Martha Peterson, and started to really focus on Thomas Hanna's somatic work, the lineage of Thomas Hanna, which is what Essential Somatics and Martha Peterson teach.
Can we talk a little bit more about the work of Thomas Hanna? What was it about Hanna's work that you found so compelling?
Yeah. Thomas Hanna's work was so different from the other somatic work that I had done. It was more direct, very specific, and it felt accessible to the average person walking on the street. In the professional dance world, and maybe in any performing art, there was an opportunity and space to spend a lot of time on your instrument. Hours. I didn't have hours anymore to lay on the floor, 8 hours, whatever, preparing for a performance or whatever it was, rehearsal. And I needed something that was more succinct, and I was more in the real world dealing with real people who had jobs 9 to 5, and a lot of people were in pain. I didn't come to this work because I was in pain, even though that's why Thomas Hanna developed this work, to help address pain. But what it does is it empowers people to feel free. And again, it was very direct, very focused, addressing the nervous system and how the brain has a huge impact on our perspective and how we live in the world. So it felt like a fast track, like a direct path to becoming more embodied and having more of a understanding of who you are from a felt perspective, sensing being.
That's an interesting perspective about this succinctness.
Yeah.
And compared to other modalities, and for people who are listening, who might not be familiar with specifically what the Thomas Hanna approach is, can you talk a little bit more about what makes Hanna's work so accessible, and what is it that is succinct or concise or targeted?
Honing in on what you sense and where you're starting, literally from a physical perspective. So we can talk theoretically, but when we distill it down, it's about what you feel as you're sitting in this chair. What do you notice as you're standing at the grocery store in the line? When you need to have a difficult conversation with someone, where are you holding? Where's the tension? And can you bring that up to the conscious level, into your awareness? And the way that we do that, the way that we become more aware and more conscious in Hanna's work, is a very specific method that animals use to reset and to shake off, literally to bring something up so that it can be resolved. If we hold trauma down, if we hold emotions down, they just grow and they fester, and we're not aware of the piling up underneath, under the surface. And so Thomas Hanna identified or gave us the language and understanding of what sensory motor amnesia is. It's unconscious holding, involuntary. So to me, that's a very direct neuroscience explanation and understanding, or that's what he contributed to the field of somatics.
You've talked a little bit about how somatic is this emerging term, and it's starting to become more broadly used. A lot of health professionals are embracing this somatic method in many different forms. What do you think it is about the somatic approach that is adding value and enhancing so many different areas of wellness?
Well, first of all, I just want to clarify that I think that the term somatic is popular. This method, they're not applying necessarily. So I'll give you an example. There's the field of somatic psychology, for example, and the word somatic is becoming very popular in the field of psychology because of the work of people like Bessel van der Kolk and Peter Levine, who understand that we can control the mind, and what we can control this conversation, and we're filtering all the time, right? I'm thinking about what I'm saying to you, I'm being really succinct with my words, but the physical body, the sensation, does not lie. It holds the unconscious and the conscious. And so that's why this word is becoming so popular, because we're in a time where people feel restricted, restrained, inhibited, held back from who they are culturally, gender, you can go socioeconomically, the whole gambit. So this work, any somatic work, is topical right now for those reasons. But the method that we use in the lineage of Thomas Hanna is very specific. So I would just keep emphasizing that not all somatic work is the same. Often people will come to see me or call me and say, I know that I'm cut off from feeling, and I want to connect more to who I am, and maybe something that I'm not noticing in my therapy, in talk therapy. And my therapist suggested that I come to you or find someone to do some specific somatic work to really uncover and excavate my experience from when I was a child. And so that's one of the things. While I'm not a therapist, I will see people who are working with a therapist, a cognitive therapist, to try to unearth some of the feeling sense, the emotions that are connected to sensations or to the pain that they have.
So let's talk a little bit more about that.
Mm-hmm.
That the specific method we apply is
Yes.
somatic movement.
Yes.
So if someone is wanting to start to get involved or wants to start to try out these types of techniques, but not all somatic work is the same.
Right.
For this work, what are some circumstances that might be most appropriate or more appropriate
Mm-hmm.
to turn to somatic movement for?
Mm-hmm. Well, this somatic movement, I think, I believe, and I've witnessed that it's accessible to anyone. It can be from someone who has got chronic back pain, to someone who has neck pain or has TMJ from grinding at night, to foot pain, or just someone who wants to feel a little bit more connected, or experience something new. So it is whatever the human, the soma that's coming to the class or to an individual session wants to get out of it. It's about learning, and Thomas Hanna said, you're the most fascinating person to you. Which is one of I love that. It's like you, actually it's really okay to be curious and interested in who you are and how you operate. And that will serve you. It will serve you, right, in any realm, if you think about it, it helps you stand strong and know, wait a second, this is my boundary, right? This is what I know about me. And one of the ways that you get there is to pause and to really listen, to have a sense experience, which is what Thomas Hanna's work offered. A sense experience, a felt experience of how you go from one place to another, literally in a very gentle, small range of movement, all based on developmental movement patterns. It's just about restoring human function, which I think is also really important.
So you mentioned some situations, foot pain, neck pain. As it relates to the work that you do with your clients, talk a little bit more about some of those situations, how people find you, what types of situations you're addressing.
Well, those that I mentioned, back pain, sacroiliac pain, difficulty walking because there's pain radiating down the leg, or difficulty walking because they have some clients come in with plantar fasciitis. And these are the kinds of things that over time, if they're not addressed, they accumulate. There's a snowball effect. So if you ignore pain, your nervous system, your whole soma will compensate for that pain. It's pretty common knowledge. It's logical to understand that, right? If I ignore the twist that I twisted my ankle, and if I ignore that and I'm limping, that limp becomes a new pattern. And then different things. Now my shoulder's bothering me on the opposite side because I've been limping to compensate. And then, 5 years later, there's a whole host of other things. There can be an emotional situation, right? Divorce, or all kinds of things, right? A loss of some kind that would cause your system to compensate and accumulate discomfort. So, yeah, back pain is a big one. And most of the time I'm seeing people when they've gone through very traditional routes, sometimes injections of, epidurals or steroid injections to numb pain, but those cortisone shots, which you're familiar with. It's a Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid effect. And what we do with this work, and grateful for Thomas Hanna for giving us a way to get to the root cause, and for an individual to be empowered to learn about themselves so they know how to self-regulate. That's another key about this. And we joke sometimes, like my colleagues and I, and we've talked about this in teacher training, that the model is not necessary. It sounds like the model is not going to be lucrative or smart from the practitioner or the teacher's perspective, because it teaches people to do this on their own. This is about education, but in fact, that is an old mentality. That is a broken mentality of, right, being reliant on someone else to fix. And what I know and what I've experienced is I'm quite busy in my practice. I'm quite busy with all the teaching that I'm doing. There is never, I don't ever run out of people to help. That's just not going to happen. So, in fact, I appreciate being able to empower people and to send them off in the world and use what I'm sharing with them. So
great. Yeah. So you've covered a lot of ground in these questions, but I know that you've been practicing for a while, and you're incredibly knowledgeable, and I'm just wondering if there's anything else that comes to mind when you think about exploring this work and really seeing the results, or starting to understand it on a different level. As you've worked through the years of your practice, have there been any aha moments that really solidifies either the value or maybe opened a new door to how you approach the work?
Such a great question. I feel like this is why I continue to do the work, because when I'm exhausted or frustrated and feel like I might not be helping someone as much as I want to be able to help them, someone walks in the door and I have a different experience. So And this happened just this last week, and it was someone came back that I hadn't seen in probably 3 or 4 months, and her chronic physical pain was very much, and she understood the connection to her emotional life and the trauma she had as a child. And she walked in the door, and she was a different person, and we talked about how she's been able to apply what I had taught her 5 months ago, 5 months earlier. We had 4 or 5 sessions. And it was amazing to witness someone who was at a different starting point from when I had first met her 2 years ago. Because she's at a different starting point, we often talk about this, right, in teacher training, where when you pandiculate, you come to a new place. It's a new perspective. It's like peeling the curtain back, right? Like revealing something new. And so your nervous system is now more available. And her nervous system, it was so clear when she walked in. She said, I'm really doing great, and I feel good, but I can sense that if I didn't come back to you and get a little bit of an extra help in this next phase, that it wouldn't be good. So what she was describing to me is, I'm self-regulating. I know that I am coming to this place where I'm just about to, if I don't address this, it's going to get worse. So I need your help. And so it was wonderful, because we were able to go deeper. We did more work because she was more available. She was calmer. She had a clear sense of what it was that she needed. She needed a little bit of extra help, a little bit more hands-on. We did a nervous system reset by just pandiculating with a little bit of extra feedback. She got up off the table and was like, wow, I feel really free and really grounded, right? So it's a physical embodiment of this emotional turmoil for somebody, right? Of how to get from this place of, I could feel, like, it's sort of like cresting the hill. We describe it as like you're cresting the hill and you start to feel the imminent, like, doom and gloom, right? And then you can back away and reset and then reapproach the hill and go a little bit further. It's the long game, right? Understanding that this is a process. And so for me, my interest is doing more of this kind of work, helping people to understand the emotional part. The physical part is obvious, and it's connecting to unconscious muscle contraction. I know, and I've witnessed over and over again, I can help someone release their back. It's pretty straightforward in this method. Pandiculating is the key. It's helping someone make the connection between when they tighten their back and what's going on emotionally for them, or what's the thought that causes that. And it's not always connected to a thought, but that intrigues me. That process intrigues me, and I'm getting more and more of those people are coming to me that want to go into that part of their psyche.
Throughout this conversation, you've used the word explore, exploration,
Yes.
curious.
Yes.
These are absolutely principles any of us who are working in somatic movement, we embrace.
Yeah.
And it becomes part of our approach to life.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about how the work has affected other areas of your life?
I laugh about the question, how has this affected all the other aspects of your life? Because I spent most of my life compartmentalizing. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, compartmentalizing. When something is painful, we put it in a box or put it in a separate room, and that can be psychically, not literally, I'm talking about. The literal part might be holding somewhere, right? I'm gonna put that trauma, from my father dying on my right side, and that side stays contracted until I start to address that loss. That's just one example. And I think that we sometimes, generally, but I'm speaking about myself personally, the compartmentalizing feels like it's a safe way to live, right? It's a survival technique. Sometimes some of us have had it from childhood, a deeply ingrained pattern. And this work helped me to unlock and feel safe to address the feelings. It felt like they were too terrifying to take out of the room, to open the door. The other aspects of my life are every aspect of my life. And when you start to feel like, for me, coming to this work, I wasn't in physical pain. And I was surprised by what was unearthed. And what was unearthed was more of the spiritual and psychological stuff that I was holding back. Changed my meditation practice. It deepened it. It opened the intuitive door also. I think we're all really intuitive, and that is something I've watched this with my kids, because I feel like it's so interesting to watch intuition get shut down with young kids. And it starts with, it could just be, I'm nervous about going to school, I have an upset stomach. Or I don't want to get on the school bus, right? And that's like, oh, no, ignore that. You have to get to school, just ignore that, push that down. That, most of our parents functioned that way. It's like, come on, you got to get out the door so I can go do my stuff. And that's where it starts. And I realized that certainly I was not a victim of that, but that was something that was a part of my life. I'm sure that until I got smart, I did that to my own kids. But they were amazing teachers, because I was like, wait a second, if I can't be honest and not expect them to be honest, or not want them to be honest. So they call me out. It's great. It's really wonderful. It changed my relationships, to answer the other question. It made me a little bit more trusting of my intuition, trusting of what I sensed and felt. And I wanted to send my kids out into the world in that way. I feel like I want that for my nieces and nephews too. As I watch them move into the adult world or be in the adult world, it's like, bracing to fight against, the traditional places that they find themselves in. And I want that for everyone, and I wish I had this a lot earlier, but I don't think I would have changed anything, in that way, like in terms of the path, because the stepping stones make it all much more valuable. This somatic work has given me access to a deeper intuitive sense and a trust in my intuition, where before I think I would question the sensation that was coming to me that would give me information, and I would push it down. I would push it aside. And that goes to what we talked about earlier, Shelly, about outside in. I think that much of my life I was focused on what was happening exterior. I was very hyper vigilant about how people were responding to me and not trusting my felt sense. And that's intuition. Somatics helped me get there because I practiced connecting to my sense awareness through gentle movements, and literally the practice that Thomas Hanna gave us was a way to accompany myself, practicing, noticing, how am I getting from one place to another.
This has been a really insightful discussion. We have one question for you that we ask everyone at SomaCurious. How would you describe your relationship with your pelvis?
Relationship with my pelvis. Delightful. In a word. Curiously, my relationship with my pelvis has evolved with the practice, and I would want to say that I've always had a good relationship with my pelvis. However, sometimes it bears the brunt of, accidents and falls and things like that. So, it's that's a great question. My pelvis is feeling great right now, today. It feels really awesome.
That's great.
Hi, thank you so much for watching. So this is SomaCurious, and we're doing a series of interviews about how to feel better in your body and in your life. So enjoy our content, subscribe.